Focus number two is to focus on what you have and not what you don't have. And, I'm going to ask this question at the beginning of this and then at the end. I want you to think right now about what is positive about your place. So your team's struggling, or if you're just watching this trying to learn, but assuming your team's struggling, maybe you're just taking over a team that wasn't very good. Maybe you're taking over a team that it's been a year or two and you're still trying to get them over the hump. This, to me, is really the key once you build those relationships and really get the ball to start rolling. Focus on what you have and not what you don't. I was fortunate enough to take over a team at Chapel Hill High School and turn it around. And they were 0-10 the year before we got there in 2007 and 2008. We got there, we won 9 games. And at the time, I think it was the first time in Georgia that a team went from 0-10 to 9 wins in 1 year. I didn't tell you that to brag. I told you that to show some credibility and to tell this story. Well, when I got there, the school had been 15-65 in the 8 years of its existence. This was the 9th year of the school being open. So they'd won in track, they won in baseball, they won in basketball, boys and girls. They won in a ton of sports, a really good in cross country, really, and had all these good coaches, and they just never won in football. And they had a few football coaches through there, and I knew they weren't bad guys, and I knew it wasn't a situation where they were all just sorry or something like that. Something just wasn't working. So I get there and I'm fired up. I'm first-time head coach. I'm excited about it. I go, and all of a sudden I catch on real quick. Here's the problem. The middle school's an issue. They don't have a great feeder system. There's not a good relationship between how we got kids from the middle school. There was 3 different schools that all fed into our one high school and parts of them, and it's a long story. We shared a locker room with the soccer and the basketball team. There was basically one male locker room. And, the money was an issue. Not I'm getting any details about that, but it was just how they did money and things like that made it really difficult to raise the amount of money you had to raise in football. So I get there and I'm immediately hit with these 3 problems. And your initial instinct is to look at what everybody else says. We're sharing this locker room, basketball and soccer. What about the school down the road? They're not. We're trying to raise money for these kids. What about this school? They don't have to do it like we do. They're getting X amount of their money. We're only getting part of ours. Whatever it is. That is immediately what comes into your mind. So I'm a little down. I'm in day 1, day 2, day 3 on the job. I go and I talk to some of these coaches that have had a really successful baseball, softball coach, had a really successful track, cross country coach, had some basketball coaches that were all right there around me teaching PE. And I'm asking them like, hey, why are we so good at all these other sports and we just cannot make it work in football? And I'll never forget the advice they told me, which was, Coach, anybody wants to win here, they're going to have to focus on what they have and not what they don't. And for whatever reason, it resonated with me because I was focusing on that locker room and I was focusing on, and it doesn't mean that stuff wasn't there, but I was focusing on it. And that was a mistake. I needed to focus on what we did have. And if we were really good at boys track, had competed for state championship, we had some athletes. We're really good at boys basketball. We had some athletes. I start going to the gym and start really trying to take the blinders off and looking at these athletes and these players and thinking, man, if we can just get this guy out in space and get this one to play and get this one. And so my focus completely turns. And now none of that changes that the locker room still was a problem, but it wasn't our focus. Focus on what you have, not what you don't have. So what do you have good in your program? Maybe you say, well, we don't have those athletes, Coach, like you're talking about. Okay, well, what do you have? I went to Pickens High School, which is probably a little different scenario, and we may not have had near as good athletes, but we did have one school in the county, small town, community, easy to raise money, easier to get support. We kind of started there. So I think wherever you go, you focus on what is going well here, and you start there. This is the best advice I get. Whatever you got, you focus on that and try to spend very little, if any, time worrying about what you can't control, because that locker room is still a problem at Chapel Hill. But you know what? Didn't matter. We went out there and won those football games. That locker room didn't seem so bad. Say, Coach, that sounds good. How can I focus on what I have? Because that sounds really good, but that's not going to necessarily save my job just saying that. Okay, well, here's a way you can do it. Avoid petty problems. Meaning when, you need to use the gym and the volleyball team needs to use the gym instead of making it me versus them, let's work this out. Let's not be one of these people who's resentful of some other success. Let's not be resentful for somebody else in the building doing well. Let's try to learn how they're doing well and how that can help us. Be self-aware, kind of know where you are, understand. See your challenges as opportunities. We would implement a no complaining rule. Just, I don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear it. I mean, I get the locker room's an issue. I get that money's an issue. It doesn't matter. It's an issue whether you brought it up or not. So no complaining. Focus on what we have. And realize that you make that determination. I mean, just like everything in life, you determine your attitude and your effort. And I think you have to remind yourself of that. If we're focusing on the negative things, that's things I'm choosing to do. Focus on what you have. Build on that.